Ugh, I wish I owned a car. It'd make weekend day trips, seeing the fam, and last-minute errands so much easier.
You don't need to own a car for that.
Really?
Check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone 24/7. It's super affordable because you only pay for the time you need, plus gas and maintenance are included.
Yeah, but bet it costs more in the long run.
Nope. Members save hundreds a month compared to car owners.
Okay, I'm checking them out.
Use the Zipcar app to book a car near you in minutes for a few hours or a weekend. Join instantly at zipcar.com. Zipcar. You don't need to own a car to have one.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle with BetMGM. Sign up today and place a $10 pregame wager on any pro football team to win. If any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game, you'll win $200 in free bets regardless of your wager's outcome. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you make your first bet. Get on the field and find out why nothing beats a win with the king of sportsbooks. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code JERSEY200 to win $200 in free bets if any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The TV is on, your friends are ready, and now it's time to get the food. Grubhub is here with your order. Don't just plan for a successful Sunday night watch party. With Grubhub, you can plan for the whole football season because Amazon Prime members get a year of Grubhub Plus for free. That means paying $0 on your deliveries from your favorite restaurants. Go all the way to the end zone with Grubhub. Download the Grubhub app today or visit goforgrubhub.com/Amazon to know more about our Amazon Prime deal. Terms apply.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing okay because that is pretty much the best case scenario for how we all are doing is okay. I'm doing a little bit better today because I get to bring you a great conversation with a new friend of mine, someone whose work I respected and I still respect for a very long time, and this is a huge episode for me, so you'll probably notice the length of this chat, and that's because I ask a ton of questions, and that is Brian McTernan. He is our guest today. He sang for a band called Battery, which was huge in my upbringing within punk and hardcore, and he also currently sings for a band called Be Well, who's releasing a new record on Equal Vision Records later this month, I think on the 21st. The record's called The Weight and the Cost. It is really, really good. Trust me in telling you this because I've got a chance to listen to it, and I was floored. I was like, wow, because I mean, these are people who played like Darkest Hour and obviously Battery and Bane, and they just know what they're doing. And this is a really, really good record. So I had to have Brian on because I wanted to pick his brain about so many different things, and we go basically everywhere. Any place imaginable, that is where we're going, talking about, life, bands, music, everything encapsulated in this conversation. So I'm very excited to chat with you about that, or to bring that chat to you. You can always email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Please email. I always like to correspond with all you fine humans out there. And also, just, to check in, just to make sure that you're doing okay. That's something that I just like to have that connectivity because, frankly, staying in your house for long periods of time, kind of wears on you. But and you can also, please, if you want to do me a favor, you can leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, on anywhere else you are listening to this podcast. That always helps out the show. And I would appreciate that. And also telling your friends. That's the best way for this podcast to get into the people's ears that need to listen to it because, frankly, that's the best way you can find out about stuff, right? Word of mouth, right? Not just letting the algorithms spit things out at you. So please do that. And here we go. Let's just dive right into it. Here's Brian.
Battery was huge for me, just straight up. Like, when I was first discovering, the more harder edge stuff after I got into the, Epitaph and Fat Record stuff and, was going down the rabbit hole. But Battery was huge for me for a few different reasons. For like, these I know will obviously speak to you because, clearly you're in the band, but the clarity of vocals on the recording, like, vocals were definitely at the forefront, and it was like, oh, I could like understand and hear and like, something to hold on to. Lyrically, obviously there was a disaffectedness that was, upon it, where, you're being put on by, going to high school and all the experiences that you have in, the real world. But then also obviously intelligent. It wasn't just kind of your sort of traditional, whatever, youth crew lyrics or whatever. And then the final component was just sort of the unity aspect. Like, I felt like you were, attempting to reach out to obviously everybody that was listening to Battery and kind of be like, hey, I know you feel weird, like, come on board, like, Battery is for you. And this may sound like just a total simple question, but like, I guess, how did you land on those things? Because Battery is still a very unique band from that perspective.
Well, I mean, there are a couple things. Like, hardcore for me really, like, it sounds really cheesy to say, like, saved my life. But, like, when I was a kid, I had, like, both my brother and I had, like, severe mental, like, depression. And my father has, like, pretty severe OCD, and my mom has had, like, pretty, like, serious struggles with her mental health as well. And I mean, I pretty much grew up having really, like, I wasn't really good at sports. I wasn't really, like, I wasn't good at school. I was not like, we were, compared to, like, my friends, we were pretty, not, I don't want to say poor, because we were fine, but we lived a very modest life. I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland, which is a pretty, like, wealthy area, and our house was a wreck. My friends never came over. I mean, I just didn't have anything that I felt like good. I didn't feel like I was worthy of anything. And I kind of like, when I first found music and I first found punk and hardcore and things like that, it was really the first time ever in my life that it was like people were excited to see me. I mean, like, what? I was 10 years old going to hardcore shows with my brother, and I was like a little novelty. You know what I mean? It was like stage diving, and fucking people, like, these fucking skinheads are like putting me on their shoulders, and like, like, it was the first time ever in my life that I had like a sense of community, and I felt like people appreciated me and respected me, and that was before I was playing music. And then eventually when I started playing music, it was like the first time again that I ever had like reinforcement for something that I created. You know what I mean? Like, everything up to that point, I had been like, oh God, a fucking soccer game or swim. Like, I was just bad at I felt bad at everything. I was kind of bad at everything. And then this music thing happened, and it was like, you know what? Like, when I was 14 years old, we recorded the Battery demo. I was in 8th grade, and it just fucking came out awesome. And all of a sudden, I mean, like there's a long backstory to how that all came about. But the short version is, I just remember being in 8th grade and walking up to the promoter at the Safari Club in DC and giving him my demo and being like, hey, Sarge, I have a band now. And he called me and was like, this is fucking great. You guys want to play with Sick of It All? And it was like, holy fucking shit. And so, like, it really was the first time that I ever felt like worthy of anything in my life. And I'm not saying that in a dramatic way. Like, it's only in retrospect that I can, like, kind of like see it. And then I think that, like, the first Battery record, like when we did Only the Die Hard Remain, that was like I was still like I mean, that's probably not the record you're talking about from a lyrical point of view with this. So that was like, we really, like, I was just 17 when we recorded that, and I was young, and I was really angry, and my life was like, you know, I loved hardcore, but like I was still living at home, and I had just dropped out of school, and my life was kind of fucked up, and it's just like kind of a reflection on like where I was. But by the time that we did Until the End, which is my, you know, I'm proud of that record. I mean, I feel like by the time we did that, I had moved to Boston. I had dropped out of school, moved to Boston. I had this crazy idea that I was going to open a recording studio, and it happened. And then just more reinforcement that like this matters. I matter. The things that like I'm saying on these records are not just for me anymore. They're like, you know, there's a sense of community, and there's a sense of like, you know, and it was really the first time, like when we did Until the End, that I was able to like kind of say, you know what, like I was around all of this like Boston straight edge where it was really like exclusive. You know, it was this like kind of cocky, like we're fucking awesome, and I was very turned off by that. And I really felt like this thing that was so like magical to me and so important and so inclusive shouldn't be like rejecting people because they're not straight edge, or rejecting people because they're different. And I also really had like, I all of a sudden had a strong sense of like that, like high school is fucking like, you know, it's like I watched my brother be, I mean, bullied to the point that it scarred him for his like entire life. And even now it's funny. I mean, this is why I love podcasts, but I listened to my brother on Toby Morse's podcast and heard him talk about things that I never knew, you know? So all of a sudden I just felt like I feel these things and I want to say them. and it was really, I mean, and things like, you know, I would probably write it a little differently, but now, but like, Why Is She in Pain? You know, that was kind of inspired. My wife, who I met in high school, had an eating disorder. And I thought, I remember thinking, 7 Seconds is like one of my favorite bands ever. And I always think about like Man Enough to Care, or Not Just Boys Fun. And I thought, like, I'm not sure that I've ever heard anybody like talk about this thing that is like so, you know, like so rampant in women's lives. And I don't know, it was just cool. It was like, I think that when we were making Until the End, it was really the first time that I ever felt like I like, not only like do I matter to like the promoter or whatever, but this is going to kind of live on, and it's an opportunity to say something that's like really important to me. The other thing about Until the End is I was in kind of like mentally a good place for the first time maybe ever in my life at that point, because I had gotten out of my house with my parents, which I needed to happen, and I had gotten away from, I don't want to say like the kids I was hanging with were bad news, but like, you know, I was hanging with kind of a rough crowd. You know, guy had been into graffiti in DC and been arrested a bunch of times, and there were fights and stuff that like, once I got away from that, I just was like in a much better place. So anyway, I kind of landed at Until the End. It was like kind of a perfect storm of like finally having a little bit of confidence, having kind of the skill to actually articulate what I was feeling, and finally being at a place in my life where I wasn't just like kind of totally lost in my own bullshit. So That's the long answer.
Appreciate
So-
the walking through those steps, because I do think it is one of those things where you know, because you had all of this experience kind of leading up to this, you know, you were able to, you know, more confidently step into all of those things that you're talking about, and then actually be able to, you know, execute on some level, even though obviously you weren't thinking about it in those terms, not like, hey, I'm going to execute a business plan or whatever. But yeah, I completely understand what you're saying.
I'll tell you something really funny about that record, actually, is that almost all of Ken came up to record that record in Boston. When I have no idea why we did this, but we tracked the drums in Boston, and then we drove to Atlanta to record the guitars and vocals with Issa from Good Clean Fun. Okay. And I have no idea why this was. I think that like Ken Olden and Ray Capo had, they had like some rap project that they were about to do. So for some crazy reason, Ray Capo was in the car with us driving to Atlanta. And I was in the back seat with headphones on, listening to the song. Like I had not heard the songs before that. And writing the lyrics while we were driving to Atlanta, and they had just finished Mantra, and Ray and Ken literally like listened to Mantra on repeat for like 14 hours while I wrote like pretty much all the lyrics for that record were written in like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And then I recorded all the vocals in like a day. And then I fell asleep, like just totally crashed, and woke up when they were doing gang vocals. And it was like just a fucking total whirlwind. It was
That's
wild.
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was totally crazy.
I love that. You know, kind of, you know, reflecting, because I mean, you have, you know, been able to, you know, express yourself in a lot of different interviews. So I'm trying not to, you know, till over the same ground that a lot of other people have. You know, it sounds like, you know, your upbringing, you know, with you and your brother, your parents were pretty permissive in regards to, you know, you guys doing this weird stuff and going to shows, you know, having those experiences. Or was that just basically you guys were going to do it kind of regardless of your parents' feedback?
No, they were permissive. So like my parents are amazing. And I think that like, you know, that they struggled. I mean, you know, they struggled, but they like wanted us to be happy. I know that they did. And we really lucked out because this is again a really crazy story, but this like, we lived in an area where there were a lot of like embassies and diplomats and things like that, because we were right outside of DC. And this family moved in right up the street, and the father was the like ambassador from New Zealand, and their son was this like super awesome badass skinhead dude, and like was like knew every band, like just literally like I would go to his house and he would just, do you like this? Do you like that? He literally would he started off playing me like GBH and Discharge and things like that, and I'm like, Finally he played me 7 Seconds, and I was just like, oh my God, this is this was 5th grade. So my parents loved him and loved his family, and he was like a really badass, like tough dude. So they let initially my brother go to a show with him, and then I'll never forget this. It was I had gone to this like field trip with my swim team, and I got back and I asked my mom, like, where's Mike? And she's like, oh, he went to see 7 Seconds.
You traitor. Yeah, you traitor.
And I was just like, oh my fucking God. So my brother's first show was 7 Seconds and Justice League at the old 930 Club. And so anyway, I was so mortified, like so bummed. But then 2 weeks later, there was another show and they let him bring him. But they, like, for all of my parents, you know, warts, like my mom literally she knew how much we loved hardcore. Like from that point on, we went to every fucking show. There's like, I don't think there's like a DC hardcore photo that exists from like that era on where like I'm not standing on one side of the stage and my brother's not like up front singing along. And my mom would sometimes like bring us and like literally just drop us off and like just drive around for like 4 hours while we went to the show on a school night. Or like there was this Warzone Youth Defense League show at this place called Worcester Hall that is now the new 930 Club. And we drove down to the show with Tim Owen from Jade Tree. I don't know if you know Tim, but anyway, a riot broke out. This like DC was like the most violent hardcore scene at that time. And like a straight up like riot broke out. And Tim Owen and Chris Oliver left my brother and I, like got in their car and left. Geez. So we had to go, like we had to like run outside, and there was like a Roy Rogers, this like fast food place across the street, and they had locked the doors because of all this fighting. We're like banging on the door. They finally let us in, and we called my mom, and she had to come down and pick us up at like 2:00 in the morning in the worst neighborhood you could ever imagine. So yeah, I mean, if they had not been the way that they were, we would not have had such immersion in the scene. So, and then every band ever stayed at our house. So it was like, you know, there's not a lot of parents where it's like 3 bands on tour just like crashed out in every single room on every surface you could ever imagine. But through that, we ended up meeting and really knowing some like really incredible bands, and it was a wild time.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I imagine there's some mornings, you know, she made pancakes for everybody, and like that sort of just like staying with parents is like the best thing ever on tour.
Yeah. So,
and then it all, you know, like you were mentioning, you know, when you first got, you know, introduced via your, you know, the New Zealand consulate friend, what kind of, you know, like you said, you heard, you know, maybe the more aggressive stuff first, but then, you know, it was the melody in 7 seconds that might have, you know, drawn you in a little bit closer. Was it, you know, was it kind of the visceral nature of the music that sort of drew you in initially? You know, what kind of spoke to you as you first started to kind of, you know, encounter this stuff? Because, I mean, frankly, that is pretty early to like, you know, start to understand kind of the context of aggressive music. Because, you know, when you're whatever 9 or 10 years old, it's there were a couple
things that happened. Like, so my older brother's best friend's sister was dating this guy, Glenn, that played in a really cool DC like Revolution Summer era band. And he got my brother started coming home originally with like The Cure and the Smiths and things like that. And then it's funny because kind of like Mike and I both kind of got, and I started getting into that. And then we wanted punk stuff, and we didn't really know what it was. And I'll never forget, my mom took Mike and I to a record store and just like said to the guy at the record store, like, we want to buy something punk. And so we ended up buying Dead Kennedys In God We Trust. And I'll never forget coming home from the mall, my brother and I like going to the record player and putting it on, and it sounded so fucking crazy that we couldn't figure out what speed it was supposed to be because it sounded so fast and crazy fast. Right. And then it sounded like fucked up slow. So anyway, I thought the look was cool. Like I thought, and then, Tim's sister, my brother's friend's sister, ended up giving us a videotape of Suburbia, the movie. And we watched that so many times. I mean, it was like not even funny. And then, so in 5th grade, I started wearing like a trench coat and combat boots and like
the full uniform.
Like
Yeah.
the full uniform. And the funny thing is, had I not like started dressing like that Jason guy who introduced us to 7 Seconds and started taking us to shows, he would have never, like, he came out of his house one day because I was walking up the street. I had this jean jacket with an Exploited patch on the back. And he came out of his house and was like, hey, and just introduced himself. And
right. He's like, I smell a punk.
I smell a punk. Yeah. So.
Man, I wish I owned a car.
Why?
You know, day trips on the weekend, seeing the fam, hitting up the vintage markets, last-minute errands.
Oh, you don't need to own a car for that.
What you mean?
You don't need to own a car to have one.
Okay.
Yeah, just check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone. It's super affordable. Gas and maintenance are included in your membership, and you only pay for the time you drive. Nothing else.
Wait, really?
Yep, and you can book by the hour or day.
Bet it costs more in the long run, though.
Nah, members actually save about $700 a month compared to car owners.
$700 a month? Wait, so this isn't your car?
Nope. I use the Zipcar app to book one for a few hours or a weekend. It's super convenient.
Join instantly at zipcar.com and book a car near you in minutes. That's zipcar.com. Zipcar. Have a car without owning one in the city.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle with BetMGM. Sign up today and place a $10 pregame wager on any pro football team to win. If any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game, you'll win $200 in free bets regardless of your wager's outcome. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you make your first bet. Get on the field and find out why nothing beats a win with the king of sportsbooks. Download the app or go to betmgm.com and use bonus code JERSEY200 to win $200 in free bets if any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Here at the Container Store, we believe you shouldn't be limited to just one happy place. Your home should be full of them. That's why we're giving you 30% off every custom Elfa space. From closets and pantries to playrooms, offices, and garages, you can transform any area with Elfa and save 30%. Here's another happy thought. Our design specialists will design your space for free. Get ready to discover your new happy place at the Container Store. Visit us in-store or online to get started with a free design.
But then he kind of made it his mission to like get, I mean, I just like, it's so crazy like how different my life would have been had I not met him.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, you have all these like signposts on the road, whether it's like records or people or whatever. And yeah, when you start to think back and kind of reflect on them, it is weird how, you know, your life as a pinball in a pinball machine.
So this is what's the craziest thing about him. So he took us to all the shows, and then he went to high school where my brother eventually went to high school, but there was this other like skinhead dude from the scene that went to that same high school. And so Jason introduced me to him. He then introduced me to his younger sister, who I started dating in 6th grade. And then I would go to her house after school, and he played drums in a band, and the band that he played drums in, Ken Olden, was the guitar player in.
So good.
So that's how I met Ken.
Right.
And also they let me come and watch their band practices. So I would literally go after school and watch them write songs, and like, you know, it was
start to get an immersion of that. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah.
As you always know, Rockabilia.com is the place that you need to buy all of your band merch. Trust me in saying that. And then use the code PC100words, and that gets you 15% off your order. It is an amazing place to buy anything you could possibly think of in relation to band merch, band paraphernalia. They got posters, they got puzzles, they got anything you need there at Rockabilia.com. Fast shipping. They take it from the Midwest and bring it to wherever you're at. And they have over 500,000 items, all stuff that is officially licensed by all of your favorite bands. So they get paid. You're supporting an independent business. You are helping out this struggling independent music economy that so many of us are aware of and are feeling. And Rockabilia is doing everything they can to make sure that not only the bands are supported, but that you get the merch that you need. So again, visit rockabilia.com, PC 100 words. That's the words PC. You probably know how to maybe spell that on your keyboard. 100 words. That's the number 100. And that gets you 15% off of your order. Thank you very much, Rockabilia.
And like you were mentioning earlier, in regards to like your high school experience and just kind of like the inner turmoil that both you obviously and your brother were kind of going through. And I know you didn't finish high school, but what kind of kid did you find yourself, I guess, being in high school besides just obviously in your head and maybe shy? Like were you, like you said, you sampled a bunch of sports and stuff like that?
I wasn't. So I actually, it's funny because my brother and I kind of responded in the total opposite ways to like high school and all of that stuff. So interestingly, I wasn't bullied in high school. When I was in 5th grade and I started wearing a trench coat and my combat boots, and we were both in Catholic school, and the school, we didn't have money, so because my mom had been a nun, this Catholic school was letting us go there for free. And when I started kind of acting out and dressing weird and being kind of kooky, they told her I had to go. So I essentially got kicked out of 5th grade. And my brother stayed there because he kept to himself. And then I was, middle school was like kind of okay for me. When I got to high school, I mean, I was the opposite. Like I was not tough, but I was real crazy. So I think for a lot of people, it was pretty clear that if they tried to pick on me, it would not end with me just putting my hood on and walking away, which is what my brother did. So I kind of got in, fights, and high school was my life. When I started high school, my life really, really, really fell apart, and I was getting in fights. I skipped the first 5 days of high school, and ended up getting kicked out of 9th grade, and was in a really kind of bad place, and my parents didn't know what to do, and ended up putting me in a hospital for a month, and then which was a real crazy. Interestingly, I really learned how to play guitar pretty well when I was there, and I had broken up already, and Ken had started doing Worlds Collide, and it was when I was away, I started playing guitar, and I really wanted to do something that was more I really grew up on DC, more Soul Side and Rites of Spring and Embrace and things like that. So when I got out of the hospital, I'll never forget, I was at this Fugazi show on the Mall, which is was maybe one of the best shows I've ever been to in my life. And this friend of mine asked me if I would come sing in their band, and I was like, no, I don't want to sing. I want to play guitar. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you played guitar. And so I went to try out, and that was what became Ashes. And so then Battery was not happening, and I was doing, so this dude I started that band with, that was Matt Squire played drums, and then this guy Noah played bass, and he was great. He was we became really close, and the band started doing really well, and we played a handful of shows, and I was in 9th grade, and then he died. He got struck by lightning, and was awful. I mean, it was maybe one of the most traumatic things that's ever happened in my life, because it was I had just like gotten out of the hospital and I was back in school, and I was at a new school, and I was kind of doing well. And I was then hanging out with these creative kids, and I felt like this connection with them. And that really like kind of like threw my life back into like a tailspin. And yeah, it was just that it was crazy.
Yeah, sure. And like I was actually going to ask when, like you said, when you were, away for, a month at basically it was like a sort of a psychiatric hospital to try to kind of like,
Yeah, it was a psychiatric hospital.
Sure. Yeah. Did you, was it one of those things where you kind of just like put your head down and were like, all right, I'm just going to get through this? Were you, I guess, a willing participant? I mean, I know that you really had no choice in the matter.
I mean, so like the first week I was there was awful. Like I feel like so awful for my mom. Like this place basically kind of like convinced my mom. Like so I had met some like some kids who were like went to like artier kind of smaller schools, and I had said to my mom, I think I could do, because I was doing really fucked up at school and like getting in fights and getting arrested and like shit was like, really bad. And I kept saying to her like, I think that if I was at like one of these other schools that wasn't so like all these jocks and 500 kids per grade and just so hectic, I could do okay. So I feel so bad for her that this is how it happened, but she told me, we're gonna go get you tested so you can go to one of these schools. And so I was feeling great, and we like walked through the hospital, and we're like walking down the hallway, and then all of a sudden I walk through a door and she doesn't come, and they closed it behind me, and it was like,
you're like, oh,
holy
this isn't
fuck.
Yeah, this isn't it. Oh, geez.
So like the first week I was there, I was a fucking wreck, and I was like fighting with the fucking nurses, like just out of control. And the other thing that was super fucked up about it is, which I think is illegal now, is that I was on a ward with adults and kids.
Oh yeah, that's not cool.
Which is fucking insane.
Yep.
But to be honest with you, once I kind of settled down, it was okay. Like it was like I was away from my family life. And like at that time, my brother and I were fighting all the time too with each other. Like he thought I was an idiot, and I thought like, why is he getting, letting people walk all over him? And we were really not. I mean, now we are so incredibly close, but it was really only like, it was really later on that happened. So yeah, so it was a psychiatric institute. And then the other thing that happened for me that saved my life was they recommended that I go to residential, like long-term, like basically get like locked up. And my insurance didn't want to pay for it. So my only other option was to go to this like high school. That's, I don't want to say it's like a juvenile detention center, but it's basically like you live there during the week and you come home on the weekends.
Sure.
And it's like for like troubled kids. And, but there was a 8-month waiting list or something. So like I got out of the hospital and I'm like just not going to school. And my godmother ended up stepping in and saying like, they can't do that, and pushed my parents and advocated for me and finally got me back into school where it wasn't that. And once I kind of got out, I got into like a different environment with some different kids that didn't know me, and I was doing okay. So that was what also was like so traumatic about Noah ending up dying, is that like I was finally starting to like put it all together, and
right.
And then
that happened.
And
yeah.
then, yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Hey, this is Sam Sumataro. I sing for a band called Drain from Santa Cruz, California. I'm here to tell you about our debut record called California Cursed, now available on Revelation Records. This summer, we're going on tour with Go to revelationrecords.com for more. And here's 4 seconds of what we sound like. I'm stoked to be part of the Revelation family. Let's take the remaining 26 seconds to dive into what it means and what's up at Rev. Revelation kicked things off in New York City in 1987 with Warzone, Lower East Side Crew. After that, Gorilla Biscuits, Youth of Today, Judge, Inside Out, Chain of Strength, and many more. The times changed in the early 90s, and Rev was there with artists like Quicksand, Texas is the Reason, Farside, and Into Another. There's new music from World Be Free, Constant Elevation, Urban Sprawl, Dare, and reissues of the classics from Inside Out, Side by Side, and Orange 9mm. Check out the Spotify playlist series. It's all at revelationrecords.com.
And because of your, early exposure to punk and hardcore and, going to shows and like you said, being so involved in the scene, did you, I guess, kind of immediately like the idea of like playing in a band? I mean, I know you obviously did it at an early age.
Yeah. I mean, if I was like not at a show, I was like in my bedroom, like moshing by myself, singing along. I mean, I like,
sure.
I mean, so yeah. And we were just so immersed. Like my brother was doing this fanzine, it's called Free Thought, which I mean, I really wish he would like scan them and put them online because they were really amazing. So, but we would get all the demos, from all the bands. And then we had a friend that had a car. So every weekend we were driving to New York City and Trenton, New Jersey. And I mean, when I was in 8th grade, just like, going to all these fucking shows. So all I wanted to do in the world was be in a band and play music and be around music.
Sure.
So,
Right. And did you have any other, I guess, like as you started to, go through these different experiences in high school, was there any conception of like, okay, here's my like sort of like career / life path or whatever? Or was it basically just like, I just need to play music and whatever.
Well, I mean, so it's really weird because I was in a really weird spot where I was Ashes was like my life, We were doing really well, especially in DC. And, I went when I was 15 and Ashes flew to California and toured with played with Strife, Outspoken, Farside, Game Face. I mean, Mean Season, Unbroken.
Yeah, big shows. Right.
Big shows with, and met all of those people. And so, but what was really weird for me was I was a disaster in school, and everybody else in Ashes was like really, they all went to private school and they were all like really good at school and like all were going to go to college and all had like really, really like different life paths. And then like, this is really crazy, but I met my wife before that, but we decided to go on our first date the same week I dropped out of high school and she got into Harvard. So I was just, I was just around all of these people that had like futures, and it was really scary. I mean, and I also had started to feel like, I was the guy in Ashes that booked the shows and dealt with the record label and, did that stuff. And I felt like I can do something, So anyway, like the long story short, I decided to move to Boston because Matt Squire, who was playing drums in Ashes, was going to BU, and Elena, our singer, was going to Brown. And so I felt like, oh, we'll keep the band together. And my wife, who I was dating at the time, was going to Harvard. So I ended up going to Boston, decided to open a recording studio, which was a crazy idea, right? So I moved into this house with set up the studio in the basement. And I lived with, do you know Sweet Pete?
Oh yeah, sure.
That's Sweet Pete, and then Pete from Mouthpiece, and then Trey from Death Wish, and and Ben Chusid, who was in Bane, 10-Yard Fight, Battery, all of that. And I lived I had a mattress on the floor in the dining room, and I had the studio in literally like a cellar. I mean, calling it a basement
is generous.
Is generous. So I thought, I'm gonna do this, and
we'll see what happens. Yeah,
I remember like walking around Boston, putting flyers up, like recorded salad days, $10 an hour. And I didn't get one call. Literally, I did not get one call. Nobody called. Nobody wanted to record at salad days for $10 an hour. And then one day, do you know Rama Mayo?
Oh, sure. Big Wheel Recreation. Yeah.
So one day Rama came by and Rama came by and was like hanging out with maybe Trey or somebody. And they said, "Oh, have you seen the studio?" So he came downstairs and was like, "Oh, you have a studio. I have a label and I have a band that needs to do a demo for the record we're going to do." And that was Cast Iron Hike, which I know you know Jake because I listened to your podcast with him.
Dude, that's that's amazing.
Yeah. So the first band I recorded professionally in my, dungeon down there was Cast Iron Hike. And it was meant to be a demo, but it came out really, really good and became their first EP. And there's a couple funny things that came from that. One, their roadie at the time, this guy Stink, came and he hated me. He had this like tracksuit on and I was like, "What are you, a break dancer?" And he was like, "This guy's a fucking asshole." But this is the amazing thing about all of it is he went on to become one of my best friends in the world. I mean, to this day, we might talk 5 times a day. Like, it's just amazing how much came from that chance, interaction with Rama just stopping by our house one day. Yeah. So the cool thing was those dudes were, they weren't just some new band. Like Chris Popecki had been in Backbone, which was like an iconic Boston hardcore band, and people were stoked to hear the band. And all of a sudden it was like, "Where'd you guys record this?" "Oh, this guy Brian." So I literally went from the first 3 months I was there, I did not record one single band. Nothing. Matt Squire and I hung out down there and wrote songs. I got a job at a video store. I literally lived off ramen. I was literally fueled by ramen and didn't record anything. By the end of that year, I had recorded, oh my gosh, okay. Converge, Texas Is the Reason, 108, Prima, 10-Yard Fight, Piebald,
it's like, just go to Brian. Yeah, go to Brian.
I mean, I literally, the list, Bane. I mean, so the funny thing was I started recording all these Boston bands, and then Texas Is the Reason. I had known, all those guys from Ashes playing with Resurrection and when Norm was in Shelter. And again, they came up to do a demo with no intention of it being anything except a demo. Because I had, Ray, if you saw my setup, I had a little Mackie mixing board. I had 2 ADATs and I had 1 compressor.
So good.
And a little reverb thing. And that's it. I mean, that's it. So they came up, and the good thing was these bands were good, and I knew enough to like get it on tape, but not, right. I didn't have enough stuff to fuck anything up. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
So anyway,
that's amazing. Yeah. So that was like, as you started to put one foot in front of the other and start to realize like, oh yes, like I can do this, and like this is what I can focus on.
Yes. So the funny thing about all of it was that I mean, and this is what's so wild, like how full circle life is, Norm ended up calling me and saying, "Oh, we're playing the first Texas is a Reason show. I mean, it hadn't come out yet. You should come down." So I went down, and it was at Steve Reddy from Equal Vision's Loft in New York City. And that's where I met Steve Reddy from EVR. And he was just like, "Wait, you recorded this?" You're like, I was 18. You know what I mean? Like, but again, there was no reason for him to trust me. But he ended up saying to me, "Oh, I have this band Prima, and they want to record, a record." And the EVR was the first. I mean, I had recorded things that eventually went on to come out on a label, but Steve was the first label to ever say, "We want to hire you to make this record." And I will never forget that. I mean, they've just been such a huge part of my life, and that kind of, I did not deserve the trust that they gave me.
Sure, that they entrusted you with. Yeah.
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 But then, and then the studio was rocking, and everything it was going so well that I ended up taking on business partners, and we took on a much bigger space. And then Matt Squire and I started this band, Ashes it just didn't work trying to do it. So Matt Squire and I started a new band, Milltown. We signed to, the short version is we ended up signing to Warner Brothers after only playing 5 shows. Cause that was in that era of
yeah, everybody was picking up everything. It's like, oh, you guys
everybody's picking up everything. And it was a really good band, but we ended up going to make a record with an awful producer that taught me everything I never want to be as a producer. And the band ended up breaking up. We scrapped the record. We were trying to write new songs. The band ended up in a fist fight, and we literally never were all in a room together again until a couple months ago when we played a reunion show with Caven.
Right.
So then I had a falling out with my business partners who kind of tried to rip me off, and Milltown broke up. The studio fell apart because I should have never gone into business with these people in the first place. I moved back to DC, and Battery breaks up. And so I went from being cloud 9, holy shit, I'm on a major label, I have a recording studio, Battery's on Revelation, everything you ever dreamed of. And then I'm back in my parents' basement with nothing. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fucked. So I had to just start over, and I rented a house and set the control room up in the dining room and put the drums in the basement and just started recording bands again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what you, that's what you know and like how to do. So it's no matter what the, circumstances are, it's well, I can always lean on this.
Yeah. So that is when I stopped playing music entirely. And a huge reason was in Milltown, Jonah, when you have a falling out with the singer, the band's over, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then in Battery, Ken wrote everything. We have a pretty bad falling out, and the band's over. And I just kind of felt I need to just focus on one thing, and I need to I can't have my life be dictated by others. I can't have this.
Yeah, it can't be contingent upon other people's feelings and decisions affecting you, not only as a person, but obviously the livelihood as well.
Yeah. And then, and things went really well with the studio. And so all of a sudden, I was literally 7 days a week, 12 hours a day for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I saved up money, bought a house, built the studio behind the house, and just kept going. And it was a whirlwind. It was really exciting, and it was so fucking awesome to be that age, and the bands were all the same age, and we were all I think about this all the time with because I think about kind of mile markers in my life, and I think about Bane Give Blood, and I think that record, like, I was like not peaking, but I was finally really good. You know what I mean? Like, I really knew how to record by that time. And they really knew how to play. And I had at that point had the experience enough to, like, you know, and it's so cool to like go back and listen to that record and just be like, wow, that, because I recorded them the first time when I was 18. And it was like so cool to like see how we all grew. Like, it wasn't just me. Like, I went down my like production and engineering track hardcore, and they went down like just being this fucking super badass band track. And we met again and we're able to just like do some of our best work together. And it's really cool. It was cool.
I'm excited to tell you about a new release from a band called Avatar coming out at E1 on August 7th. The record is called Hunter Gatherer. So you can, go quickly pre-save that on any, streaming platform of your choice. But the band got keyed into me, and I watched a video. I streamed their music. It was one of those things where I had never heard of them before, frankly. And after kind of getting to know them a little bit, I was like, these dudes are going for it. Like, it's very theatrical. It's heavy. It's got a lot of stuff going on. But I mean that in a good way. Like, let me just sample a little bit of the music for you, and you can kind of, get a feel for it. So here it is. The song is called Silence in the Age of Apes. It's off this upcoming record of theirs. So check it out, and I'll come right back. Pretty crazy, right? Like I said, they just, they throw everything at you. And they're dudes in their mid-20s. Like, they've been doing this for a while, but they have such a clear and concise vision for what they want to do musically. So, again, the band is called Avatar. Their record is called Hunter Gatherer. Comes out August 7th. So pre-save it now. Pre-order it. Do whatever it is that you need to do to support this band. Visit avatarmetal.com for all of that information. Okay? Thank you very much, E1.
Something I always found interesting about Battery kind of at large was the fact that you guys, did so well in Europe. Like, it's not to say that you did not do well here in the States. Like, clearly you made an impact here, but like Europe was obviously on like a whole different level. That must have been really kind of weird. Like, because that wasn't something that, a lot of bands, yes, hardcore bands obviously toured over in Europe, from Chokehold to Ignite, Sick of It All, like all that. But Battery, it seemed very disproportionately, weighted towards Europe. Was that kind of weird, like, as that started to build over there?
The crazy thing about that is, I don't know if you know this part of the Battery story, but we had broken up, and then, like, all of a sudden one day I walked into a record store and there was a Battery record.
Yeah, the Lost and Found stuff, right?
CD.
Yeah.
And
right.
Lost and Found. And I thought it was a bootleg, but it wasn't a bootleg. I literally did not find out until like 2 years ago from my brother that Lost and Found distro had been buying Battery 7 inches and Worlds Collide stuff from my brother and Ken, and ended up wanting to put it out over there. Now, I was like not tight with those guys at the time, so they just did it and they just never told me. And I literally walked into a record store, I'm like, Battery, what the fuck is this? So Lost and Found ended up saying, like, people love this over here, and do you guys want to make a record? And that's what prompted us to do Only the Diehard Remains. So at that point in time, this, like, in 1994, when we recorded that record in 1993, and when we went on tour, we had only played 2 shows in the U.S. ever at that time.
It's so wild.
Ashes had played 1 million shows. Worlds Collide had played 1 million, but Battery had not played. And dude, the first night of the first tour in Europe was like 800 people.
So crazy.
And we were like, you have to keep in mind that, like, even a big hardcore show at that time in the US was 200-300 people. right?
Yep.
I had not ever really been to a hardcore show that was that big and that crazy. And the whole tour wasn't like that. The second night of the tour was 2 people. But it was lost and found for all of their awards. They were like a really, really good record label with marketing. I mean, every magazine we picked up, there was a full page ad. I was doing interviews every single night. Every town you got to, there, posters everywhere. Like they really, really pushed the band, and I loved Europe. So I mean, it really wasn't like we went to Europe, we came back, we then did we went back again like 4 or 5 months later after the first tour. And then and at that point we had done 2 European tours before we had ever toured in the US. And that's when we did after that we did Until the End, and that was the first time we did a US tour where we went out with Eyelid and 10 Yard Fight and did the whole US. And it was great. And it was an awesome tour. And then went back to Europe and then came back and we did the Rev tour and went back to Europe one more time, and then that was it.
Yeah.
But Europe has always been, I mean, the thing is, like, there are a couple things. One, when we were touring there early on, really a lot of bands were not going there. So I think that the kind of connection you make with people when you're like one of the first US bands that they've ever seen is really special. And 2, the music and the arts, and it's so embraced over there. Like, it's like, I mean, even now it's so cool to like when we went back recently, it's just like so amazing how many of the same people are still there, like still the same promoter at the same club and the same venues we've played a million times. And it's just not really like that here. I mean, like the hardcore scene, it's like the venues and the promoters and stuff like are not as kind of like immersed in.
There's a bit a bit higher turnover rate, not only from like the promoter perspective, but obviously people that attend shows. I mean, in Europe, it is so much more of a diehard. We have a long memory. Like once we latch onto a band, like we will remember them forever. In ways that America obviously is a little bit more transitionary when it comes to that.
Interestingly, touring Europe back then was really rough. I mean, like,
sure, like
on the first tour, I'll never forget, we played this squat that had wild dogs in it, and they for our own safety, they had to lock us in the room we were sleeping. We couldn't get out, and I had to like piss on the floor. I mean, it was like crazy. And then we did a tour with Unbroken over there that was amazing. But the bus we went on a bus, which sounds amazing, but it didn't have heat. So like literally, it was so fucking cold. I would sleep in all of my clothes, my jacket, 2 sleeping bags, and it was so cold that my water bottle would be frozen in the morning.
Yeah, that's like, there's something wrong with this.
Yeah. And the other thing about touring with Unbroken was it was a bad idea because they were like really fucking good and we really weren't that good.
Sure, totally. And they obviously had they had the Lost and Found connection as well. So it's like the shows were equally, like both bands were in demand. That's really, really funny.
Yeah, that was those early Europe tours were insane. I mean, they were so good, and like, it was so cool. Like on this we just did this tour last summer with H2O over there, and so many people came out wearing their shirt like from the first tour, and it's so, I don't know, it's
really it's special. It's special.
I mean, like now that I'm older and I can reflect on like how special it is to like have been a part of this community for so long, it's just really, really cool. I mean, when I was younger, I just, you're like, it's always about the next thing. And I never really like zoomed out and said, holy fuck, my life has been so crazy and cool. You know what I mean? Like I never, and I am not.
You don't have perspective. You don't have perspective.
So it's
that's ultimately what it
interestingly
is.
now I am. I like when we went on that last tour, literally that H2O tour was like the best experience of my life. I loved those guys, and I literally I'm going to this. I mean, it's cool because it sounds like my wife gets mad when I say this, but I like every single thing could be the last time ever. Like, and I don't say that in a bad way. Like, I mean that in a like, how fucking lucky am I that I'm still getting to do this, and I'm not gonna miss it this time. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna like not appreciate it. I'm not gonna be like homesick and thinking about like the next tour, or you know, are we selling enough? Are we, you know, what are the merch numbers? Like, I'm just like, I'm a fucking playing the music that I literally love more than anything in the world, all over the world, with all of these awesome people, and reconnecting with people that like have supported my career and my adventures in this thing, from, you know, buying other bands' records that I've produced or coming to see my own bands. And like, I'm not going to miss it this time. I'm going to like,
I'm present.
Soak it in and enjoy it.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, what's your relationship been like with the sort of business side of music? Like you said, you know, you were, you know, the guy booking shows and communicating with the record label, and clearly you had to do a lot of that when you were, you know, your production stuff. You know, it sounds like you had obviously an interest and a proclivity towards it. But you know, what's been your relationship with, you know, kind of the art and commerce side of things?
Well, the funny thing is, I don't care about money at all. I mean, that sounds like I care about money to the extent that like, you know, I
it's a tool to live, right?
Yeah. It's a tool to live. It's not something that I value, you know. The funny thing is, I've done well, you know, despite the fact that it's not a motivator. It's interesting because I feel like every decision I've ever made in my life that was to make money has always been the wrong decision, and often did not lead to success. You know what I mean? Like, the decisions I made where it was like, I love this, I want to be involved, I don't care what the budget is, have been the decisions that have been the best decisions and brought me the most success. So it's interesting because I'm good with money, and I'm responsible with it, and have a good mind for business and the music business. And, you know, in the brief time that I stepped away and actually got like a real job for a time, was really quite successful at running this company that I was running. I just don't really care about money. And so it's like funny when like that was kind of a wake up call for me, when I was like, I took this job and I was making a whole bunch of money, and it was like probably the most miserable I've ever been ever. And it's like, because all of a sudden you're doing something you don't care about at all, and the only reward of it is something you don't care about at all, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's just like the snake eating its tail. It's like, wait a minute, I caught this. I don't care about this. So yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. Like, I try and not think about it, you know? And on the flip side of that, like, I try and, you know, I've had like a, you know, I mean, I had a label deal through Atlantic Records, and
Moments in Grace. Don't act like don't act like I don't know that. Yeah.
You know what's funny is it's funny because I was like on Circus Survive's I was on Circus Survive's their Patreon podcast the other day, and Anthony asked me about Moments in Grace. And I wish I had said this at the time, because someone said to me pretty recently, could you imagine if Moments in Grace had come out after Circa? Like,
sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like Circa changed the landscape in this like subculture in a lot of ways, and it like Moments in Grace, people did not know what to make of it. Like,
no,
it's
not
like
at all.
singing like this, and it's spacey, and it's, you know what I mean? Like, in a post Circa world, I think that record could have done really well. Songs were great, and
dude, for sure, it was. Yeah, that's why I tour managed Alexis on Fire when Moments in Grace, and so I met Jeremy, and it was one of those things where it's like every night I was just like, dude, why are children looking at this like with dead faces? This stuff is amazing. And so, yeah, I totally get that.
I mean, he's really amazing. That whole thing ended up being a bad situation. Not a bad situation, but basically, like, I had this idea of like a business model that has now gone on to be proven that worked really well, where like we would sign these bands to and then partner with indie labels to help develop them, was kind of the gist. But then what happened was, as soon as I signed my deal with Atlantic, which was like 100% to like develop new bands and focus on like really kind of grassroots stuff, Warner Brothers got bought by like some public company, and then they were just basically like, we can't do that. We need shit that's going to happen now. So Moments in Grace was never meant to come out on Atlantic that way. And had we done what our original plan was, which was like partner with like Equal Vision or somebody like that and develop it that way, I think it would have done way, way better. But, you know.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree.
Then,
I definitely agree.
So anyway, the business side of things, I mean, I'm pretty good at it, but I don't care. It's not like it doesn't motivate me. And every time I find myself thinking about that stuff, like sales or, you know, shit like that, I'm just fucking miserable. And actually, you know, it's funny. In the studio, you know, when like Absolute Punk started like posting like sound scans and things like that, and all of a sudden, like what bands were selling became like a part of the story. You know, like in that era, it made me really miserable. Not Absolute Punk. I'm just saying, like, all of a sudden I found myself thinking about that in the studio. Oh, is this a single? Is this, you know, is this going to sell well? And it made me so fucking miserable because, like, one, you know, honestly, most of the shit I love isn't big. You know what I mean? Like, that's not why I've ever got into this. It was never like a motivator for, it's not like, it's funny actually, because Matt Squire and I, right, were incredibly close, but he wanted, like, when he was like putting music on and we were driving in Ashes, he'd be putting on like, you know, like pop, like, you know, pop stuff as well as hardcore, but like he always wanted like big stuff, like, and it doesn't shock me that he went on to be so fucking successful. But I like Dag Nasty and like I like shit that is not, you know, like never was mainstream. So it's like all of a sudden I found myself in this world where it's like I'm trying to do something that I don't even really care about. And I'm like judging my success and failure again on like something that doesn't actually matter to me at all. So I actually like, it made me really depressed. Like, you know, you produce a record and it comes out and it flops, right? This doesn't make it a fucking bad record. Sometimes that makes it like the best record because a lot of the shit that is like the best, you don't even realize how fucking good it is till way later. And so there was like a really pivotal point at the end of the Atlantic era of my career where I feel like that really sidetracked my production stuff as well, because all of a sudden I was like, you know, you're getting CC'd on 200 emails a day and your phone's ringing off the hook and you're trying to make a record and it's like you're you're just like pulled in a million different directions. And I just didn't thrive in that with that going on. And when I decided to build, I ended up selling my studio in Beltsville to Matt Squire. And that was the studio where I did like the first Circa record and Thrice Illusionists, both Thrice records I did. And that was a really cool place. But I really wanted to have like a real, like, I wanted like a studio that I felt like was like at the time, like on par with where the bands were at. And when I made that decision to kind of recommit to only focusing on, production, I did like some like real soul searching. And I said to myself, I can't control if this is going to sell. Like, there's so many things that fall into like whether or not something hits or doesn't hit, right? I can't control in the end if a band is going to love what we did together. Like, I don't know, are they going to be unhappy with the guitar sounds? Are they going to be unhappy with the drums or whatever the fuck? All of that stuff I can't control. The only thing that I can control is knowing that like I gave my heart and soul to every record every single time. And when I kind of like made that kind of commitment to myself to like stop thinking about the business side of it, I started making better records again. So, it's just funny because I think some people are inspired by, holy shit, this could be fucking huge. I just don't go there. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I want it to be big because if it's fucking great. And I love that, like, so many bands, like I helped them make records that got their career on track and they're able to have houses and kids and things like that. And like, I want the success for them in that sense. But when I was thinking, is this a hit? Does it get to the chorus fast enough? I just made bad decisions and I made records that didn't feel like my records. And kind of when I was kind of reconnected with like the thing that mattered to me the most in the beginning, I started making better records again. And then just as I was starting to really like get in the zone, the bottom fell out of the music business and things got really, really stressful really, really fast because I had this big studio with a shitload of overhead and budgets went from, down like, at first 20%, then 30%, then 50%. And then literally it got to the point where I was, for some of the records I wanted to do, it hardly even covered just the sheer overhead, much less pay me anything. And that was a really wild, and it was like right when my daughter was born, and it was like a really, it was kind of a crazy time.
Right. And so then that was actually what I was going to ask next, where when you, were, you had Beltsville, and like you said, there was so much happening from the production stuff, like where it was like, everybody, ostensibly in the independent music scene, whether you were, punk, hardcore, whatever, was always like, oh yeah, like, go to Brian, like, to see if Brian has available time and stuff like that. And then, and then obviously as things started to change, and like you said, as the music industry evolved to where budgets weren't what they were, was it one of those things that like you, not took it personally, but it was like, that is a sort of ego play where, and not saying that you were buying into the ego play, but just being of like, oh, I was this like, quote unquote hot commodity. And then now I'm not because of all these extenuating circumstances or whatever. Was that a tough, I guess, mental shift for you to be able?
Well, so I didn't ever think about it like that because I never stopped being busy. It was like basically most of the labels I had like a really good relationship with. So it was always kind of like, I'll do the record for what you have, I mean, like if I loved the band, I can think of very few times where I ever didn't do a record because
Right. Their budget wasn't there. Right.
The money wasn't there, right? I think that the budget for The Illusion of Safety, which we spent a month on, was $6,000. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And like 300,000 records later or whatever the fuck it is. Like, I don't really care I never cared about that part of it. And I didn't take the budgets dropping personally, but certain things happened where I had never had a label not pay me. Ever. It had never happened. And then like right when my daughter was born, we were doing the Bled Silent Treatment record.
Yeah.
And I hadn't gotten a deposit from Vagrant. And but I had done so many records for Vagrant. I mean, it's fucking Vagrant, right? Would you ever think that like you're not going to get paid by Vagrant?
No.
So Bled's there. We're making the record. We're almost done with the record. And I said to my manager at the time, like, hey, I still haven't gotten a deposit for this. And then it turned out that like Vagrant's deal with Universal had fallen through, and the Bled was like under the Universal thing, and Universal didn't want the record, and they were just like, we can't pay you. And it was a pretty big, it was a big budget, and they were there for like 2 months, and I still had all the expenses associated with having a band living in my studio for 2 months, but no income. And my daughter had just been born, and at that time, I was successful. So we had like a weekend house on the river in West Virginia, and we had a big house that we lived in, and I had a 6,000 square foot studio in like a really nice neighborhood downtown. I mean, the fucking utility bills alone were insane. So all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, you don't get paid like $80,000. I was not running my business in a way where I was like preparing myself to have things like that happen, because until it happens, most people aren't planning for that. And I'm not like, I was still pretty young, and we ended up having to like pay shit on credit cards, and the downturn in the combination of like, so I will say in Vagrant's defense, God bless them, they did finally pay me. It took like maybe 6 or 7 years. They paid me in little bits every time. And they basically said, we will pay you, but I'm gonna just have to pay you when I can. And we went on to do more records that were like totally fine. It was just that Bled record was this outlier because it was like the whole thing had fallen apart while we were already in the studio. And they weren't a part of this new deal they signed.
Man, I wish I owned a car.
Why?
Day trips on the weekend, seeing the fam, hitting up the vintage markets, last-minute errands.
Oh, you don't need to own a car for that.
What you mean?
You don't need to own a car to have one.
Okay.
Yeah, just check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone. It's super affordable. Gas and maintenance are included in your membership, and you only pay for the time you drive. Nothing else.
Wait, really?
Yep, and you can book by the hour or day.
Bet it costs more in the long run, though.
Nah, members actually save about $700 a month compared to car owners.
$700 a month? Wait, so this isn't your car?
Nope. I use the Zipcar app to book one for a few hours or a weekend. It's super convenient.
Join instantly at Zipcar.com and book a car near you in minutes. That's Zipcar.com. Zipcar. Have a car without owning one in the city.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle with BetMGM. Sign up today and place a $10 pregame wager on any pro football team to win. If any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game, you'll win $200 in free bets regardless of your wager's outcome. Just use bonus code JERSEY200 when you make your first bet. Get on the field and find out why nothing beats a win with the king of sportsbooks. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code JERSEY200 to win $200 in free bets if any player scores a touchdown in any pro football game. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
So I switched to Boost Mobile and got this free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone.
Why do you think they call it the Galaxy?
Maybe because the Samsung Galaxy A23 has a huge screen, and galaxies are huge gravitationally bound systems of stars rotating around a supermassive black hole.
And the phone is free?
When you switch to Boost Mobile.
Cool. You lost me at gravitationally bound.
Switch to Boost and get a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power. Limited time offer while supplies last. New customers only. Excludes tax. One device offer per line. Only available on certain networks. 5G not available everywhere. Additional restrictions apply. See your local Boost Mobile store for details.
So, we went.
So yeah, it was just that weird limbo.
I mean, I did the Census Fail records after that, and they always paid me and they were always good, but like he would give me a little bit every time. He probably got a check from a distributor and eventually did pay me. But what came of that was, I mean, all of a sudden it was like, I have this huge debt now, right? Because I had all of this money that didn't come in. So then we put a bunch of things on credit cards just to keep things going. But then the bottom dropped out. So then it was like, I really wasn't able to there wasn't any fluff.
You were playing catch up.
I was playing catch up, and it was like, and we ended up having to, we sold our house. We sold the house in West Virginia. We basically my daughter had just been born. So it's like all of a sudden we have like $1,800 a month in childcare, and it was so stressful. And so, I mean, I just had so much to do to kind of like keep the train on the tracks. I wasn't thinking at all like, oh, I'm not the guy anymore. These budgets are bad, and it's a reflection of
you
me.
had no.
I was like,
right.
I gotta pay these bills.
Survival
we
mode.
We gotta sell the house. We gotta do this. We gotta we had to make, and we did. We made some like really smart decisions. But kind of at the end of it, I ended up feeling like I'm so fucking burnt and I'm so tired and I just can't do this anymore. So the other thing that ushered in at around that time, which is now a thing, which really in the early days of making records wasn't a thing, where bands started coming to the studio with nothing written and wanted me to write their songs and sometimes play the shit. And like, I think that like records, there was such a high turnover, like records had to keep coming out or you weren't current anymore. And so labels were sending bands into the studio when they really had no business going in. And I'm like feeling like I'm not feeling the like magic anymore. I'm feeling like I'm a babysitter at my job instead of a producer, right? And then I'm going home and have an infant, and I'm like, so I just was a bit disillusioned. So we ultimately decided to sell the building that the studio was in, and which was the best decision. Was heartbreaking, but it was the best decision of my life because we had bought it at a time where it was like, we were like on the edge of a really nice neighborhood, but bordering just kind of like this wasteland. And when I bought it, it was that way. By the time I sold it, you walk down the street and it's like the Four Seasons and Whole Foods and all of this. It had become a really nice neighborhood. So the property had become valuable. And it basically was like, I was able to sell it. I was able to we were able to kind of like get our shit kind of back on track entirely. And at first I thought I'm going to move. I moved in with Paul Levitt to a studio space do you know Kevin Bernstein?
No, I don't.
He's a producer. He did like the early Pianos Become the Teeth. He's a brilliant producer. And then Paul Levitt is like one of my best friends, and he did like All Time Low and a lot of like cool stuff.
I know the name.
So I moved into a studio space in the building where they were. Like I took over a studio that was there. And basically that little year that I was there, I did I'm not going to say the records that made me totally. I had a couple records that I still, when I think about making them, it brings me like unwavering joy, which are, I did the last Fireworks record there, and I did the Angel Dust AD record, the pink one. I don't know if you know that one.
Yep, I do.
And then I did Turnstile Nonstop Feeling there, and I did oh my God, I did some stuff that was just awesome.
That's really cool.
But I had a handful of projects where it was literally like, I'm playing their songs for them, I'm writing their songs for them, and I like can't. In that little era of time, I can't tell you how many times I said to bands, it's such a shame that I care more about your band than you do. And ultimately, I kind of just felt like I need a change. And
yeah,
I ended up applying for a job. Like, so the little, we won't go down this rabbit hole, but I had been I always built my own studios, and then my wife, and then we had gotten into like rehabbing houses, and I have like a deep love for architecture and construction and things of that nature. So I applied for a job as like a project manager for a construction company, and kept the studio for a little while, but just did what I never in a million years thought I would do. And I took this job, and then I'm a fucking hardcore kid that's like hustled my whole life. You know what I mean? Like, I was booking tours when I was 15, and, you know, I don't want to say like entrepreneurial, but like,
you're a multitasker. I get it.
Yeah. So they had never had anybody come and be like that, you know? So within 6 months of me being there, I was the COO. They made me COO, and I was essentially running the company. And, you know, it's a, you know, $25 million a year company, and I'm, you know, it was like crazy life change, you know? And then, I mean, and actually, believe it or not, Paul Levitt, I hired him there because he was kind of in a similar transition where he was like not able to like make enough in the studio to like have a kid and have things like that. And he still works there. But and at first it was kind of fun. You know, it was like, oh, I've never gotten a paycheck in my whole life. Like, I've never, you know what I mean? Like, I'd never had that.
Yeah, this is what it feels like.
And then the people that work there were like horrible people. And two, my job involved me driving, being alone a lot. And like, ultimately, you know, I mean, I struggled with like severe depression my entire life. And like, when I was in the studio, I just poured myself into the records like hardcore. And it was kind of like the way that I didn't let that kind of like totally overtake me. And I, you know, and then the thing is like, it sounds awful. I almost feel bad saying it, because I know that bands will end up feeling like, I don't know, like, I felt like I couldn't ever share that with my clients because I felt like, you know, the producer is the fearless leader. You know, the band's in there super neurotic, anxious, afraid, like, and my role was to not be afraid and to lead, and to be the person that had the perspective to like lead them to where they needed to go. And I always felt like if they knew how like fucked up I actually felt and how like kind of fragile I really was, that I couldn't do that thing. So I kind of just buried it all, and I buried it. And then because I was around people all the time and constantly moving and constantly making records and constantly having things that I could put all of that into that were like productive things, all of a sudden I have this job that's paying me way more than I ever made it ever in the studio. But I don't fucking care about that. And I'm all by myself all the fucking time. And like, it slowly just built and built and built. And I was so like, instead of having anything to like pour that into, like I tried to care about this job the way that I just do. And that just made me feel worse. And then I would get home and I would just drink because like I just didn't have any other way to like deal with like I just needed to shut it off, you know. All of these things like I was thinking and I literally like could not escape, like literally like 20 plus years not allowing myself to, or you know, I don't want to say that I buried it in my work because that isn't, my work gave me something to pour it into. And when I didn't have that anymore, it became really fucking apparent that I was a mess. And like my wife and I were so disconnected. And I felt like when I got home, I literally just could not function. And it was way easier to just like numb it than it was to feel it. And I then didn't have anything. My entire world was these bands. My entire social network is my clients. I hate to call them clients. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's this whole side of me that they don't know about at all, right? Like, they literally have no idea that I've like struggled with this my whole life. To them, I'm Brian, who's fucking yelling at them in the studio to do it again, and is sending Chuck Reagan to take vocal lessons, and is this like mythical person that I really wasn't. And then all of a sudden, you know, you wake up one day and you realize like this person that everybody that loves me so much doesn't exist. Like, that's not who I am. And then you also have the feeling of like, you can't, if you look at my life, and I'm not saying this in an egotistical way at all. I'm saying this, if you look at the trajectory of like the things that I've been able to be a part of in my life, it's really stunning. And I know that, right? The successes I've had, the experiences I've had, the people I've been able to like intimately work with are some of the most incredibly beautiful and talented people ever. And when you get to a point in your life where you're like, okay, I went from having no hope for my life to marrying my high school sweetheart, becoming a renowned record producer, touring the world and having this community of people that are just so incredible, and I'm still fucking totally miserable. It was like the scariest, you know, like, what do you, like, the studio's gone. I don't have a reason to be in touch with all of these people anymore. I have no friends that aren't band people, right? And I have no reason to really be talking to the band people. And then you also have this weird thing where some of the band people feel like, oh, we're not recording with Brian anymore, so we're not friends with Brian anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And like, I literally was in the darkest. I mean, it's like, I shudder to think of it now. I mean, I'm not going to get into like things I thought, but it was a really terrifying.
Sure.
It was a really scary time for me. And then what ended up happening was we ended up, the guys really wanted to do a battery show. And and we decided to do. I reluctantly decided to do that, but the timing of it was like kind of totally fucking perfect in that all of a sudden it was like I was in this really bad spot, and then all of a sudden I had this reason again that I needed to be like talking to people and talking to friends and talking to people that I had known my whole life. And I also, because, you know, like the battery stuff, that's like a more emotional side of me than like the producer who's like the ball buster, you know, in charge of everybody person. And what became immediately clear to me was that literally just having something to look forward to started to like wake me up. Like all of a sudden I was like, in the morning, I'm not like, whatever. When I get home from work, you know, I've got like interviews I need to do and art I need to look at. And I had a reason to not come home and just start drinking. And I had a reason to reach out to people. And then we like did a new song, and it was like I hadn't created something of my I never thought I would play music again in my entire life. And all of a sudden, like so we did this battery song, and I literally wrote the lyrics and then thought, I don't know if I want to say this. Like it's so personal. Like I basically wrote it about being in a mental hospital, and then the fear of knowing that that part of me exists and being terrified that I would pass that on to my daughter. And and what was amazing was we did that, and then like all of my like band friends that I was like lived in fear of them ever knowing that that part of me existed started reaching out to me and being like, dude, I had no idea. That's like, and all of a sudden it was like, you know, I have this new connection like with these people where like I'm not like the producer ballbuster guy. Like I'm like, we're connecting in a totally new way. And like people's reaction wasn't, oh fuck, like that dude, you know, it's fucking crazy. It was, dude, how did I never know that this happened to you? Like, how have we known each other for this long? And then, so we did the battery tour, and literally it was like life-changing for me. Like I just like realized like I missed music. I missed the community. I missed having a reason to like wake up and have something on the horizon to look forward to. And yeah, and then like, you know,
that pulled you that pulled you out of your headspace that you were obviously dwelling in. It didn't
totally pull me out, but what it did was like it gave me a glimmer of hope, and it gave me like some perspective on that whatever the fuck was happening in my life could not go on. Like that there was a me, that it could exist, that wasn't totally miserable, spending every waking moment trying to not think what I was thinking. You know what I mean? Like, and there was like a me that like could then be just, you know, like could express those things, because that's the amazing thing about music. It's like, I'm literally like one of the most private people you'll ever meet, right? I don't like to post things. I don't like people know, like, I don't want to go anywhere and have anybody recognize me. Like, I don't like any of that. But you get me in a fucking hardcore show and stick a mic in my hand in a sweaty ass room, and I will pour my heart out like nobody's business. And that's the amazing thing about, I mean, that's the thing that makes me still love and believe in hardcore music so much, is that it is like this medium where like it is about like honesty and like you can say like I can say something in a song or into a microphone that I literally would never say to anybody one-on-one. And for someone like me that has all of this bottled up, like I just need that. So interestingly, the thought originally was I had started writing all of this. Like I had started writing again, and just to kind of get some of this shit out. And then the original thought was that that we would make another Battery record. And I told you earlier that like I didn't want to have like a band contingent on one person that could like have a falling out and have it all fall apart. Well, I also, in Battery, I never wrote the music. I only wrote the lyrics. And at this point in my life, 20 years later, I mean, I'm a pretty accomplished songwriter. I'm really like love writing songs, and I'm not going to play music where I'm not writing a part of that process, right? It was fine when I was 18, but like now I want to write. Like if it's a huge thing for me. So I literally wrote like 20 song ideas, and I sent them to Ken, and he didn't even like one of them. Not even like a riff. And it was cool. I mean, it was fine. Like we have this weird relationship where when I met him, I was in 6th grade and he was much older and he was already good. I mean, I learned how to write songs and play music and all that shit from him. So we have, I don't want to say it's not an unhealthy relationship in that like we get along really, really well, but I think there's like part of it that never quite readjusted to like at this point in time. I mean, I have people that like fly from all over the world to come just write songs with me. It's kind of weird to like want to have a band where it's like, no, sorry, dude, I write everything. Like you know what I mean? Like, and I think part of that is that like the lens he still sees me through is like the little kid lens. You know what I mean? So anyway, we go out and we have lunch. We go to this food court in the mall. And I'm like, so there's nothing you like? And he's like, no. And he had sent me a bunch of stuff. And he's like, what about the stuff I sent you? And I'm like, it's just like, it's not, I'm not feeling it. And it was like totally cool. Well, let's just not do this. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then Mike Schleibaum, who's in Battery, is also in Darkest Hour and is like one of my closest friends in the world, said to me like, dude, you have to fucking do, these songs are awesome. I love them. Like, are you going to like let the fact that like one person doesn't like them keep you from, and he literally would like torture me and torture me and torture me. And then finally one day he said to me like, yo, Pat from Majority Rule is in town and I set up, so you got to come over and like demo these song ideas with him. And that was the beginning of what is now Be Well. And, you know, I went and jammed that stuff, and it's, and so I think it was good in that, like, I think that the world does not need a Battery record that isn't incredible, right? And you can't make an incredible record if you're not, like, I didn't want to just make a record to make a record where Ken didn't like what I was writing and I didn't like what he was writing. And I think that ultimately it was better to just, I mean, it would have been a whole lot fucking easier to make a new Battery record than start a whole new fucking band in my 40s, you know, with nothing. But I'm really like happy that it ended up, you know, kind of playing out the way,
panning out that way.
And then, and honestly, like Be Well has been like, it's been like cathartic for me. Like, I mean, it's because of the time that I wrote the songs, it's pretty like emotionally heavy. And it's like, I mean, I don't want to say it's like, it's funny because some people find it really dark and some people find it really hopeful. And for me, it is the most honest thing that I've ever done in my life. Like, I actually can't believe that I like put on paper some of the things that I did. And I've had multiple people say to me, "Are you sure you want to say that?" And for me, it's like what making that record has, doing this band and making that record has meant for me is, one, just fucking saying it takes so much of the power away. And like hearing back, like I know how unreasonable some of the things I feel are, you know? And it's like saying it and not feeling like hiding things about yourself from the world that are like integral to who you are as a person is so corrosive. And I mean, I think all the time about like how many of my friends that I now know are gay and hid that, or were abused and hid that, or someone like me where morbidly depressed at times in my life and I literally never said it to anyone, you know? And the weight that puts on someone and how it can like kind of eat at you and really like, I mean, it can get to a point where it can like entirely consume you, you know? And I think that like what's hard is, I mean, I'm not like I don't have like some public persona where, you know, people know. I'm pretty private, so people don't know that. But like my friends, you know, having people that are like a big part of my life not know something that's such a big part of me, it's super, you know, the loneliness that accompanies that is pretty like paralyzing, you know? And so what's awesome is that I got that shit out, and it's like also having something to think about and work on and like has been like, you know, I'm never going to not be someone that has like mental health issues. But I mean, Ray, like I am in such a better place right now. And like so much of it has to do with like making music again and having a reason to talk to Dan Sandshaw every day. And, you know, like having art to look at and having, you know, things to worry about that aren't just like unreasonable kind of like crazy thoughts in my head. It's just like it's like, again, I'm looking at my life and thinking like, God, like this community, like what this has meant to me at pivotal times is just like really fucking incredible.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, you summarized it perfectly. I was going to obviously ask you about Be Well, but you did a great job at it. But yeah, I could obviously go on for a while, but I'm not going to punish you anymore. But thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate you coming on the show and being super open because, yeah, I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I love what you do, and I feel like I've known you my whole life, but like I don't. So we have to make that's a new life goal, is for us to stay in touch. And
absolutely, it's my absolute pleasure. Well, thank you.
That was a long one, right? Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. I know I did. And yeah, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much to Alexa, the publicist, for setting this up. And yeah, just a great conversation. Next week, I've got a very, very good band. Year of the Knife. Madison Watkins. She is the bass player for the band. And yeah, they have a new record out, and it's really, really good. I wanted to have Madison on, so we did it up. Anyways, that's what we got next week. Until then, please be safe, everybody.
Ugh, I wish I owned a car. It'd make weekend day trips, seeing the fam, and last-minute errands so much easier.
You don't need to own a car for that.
Really?
Check out Zipcar. They let you book cars from your phone 24/7. It's super affordable because you only pay for the time you need, plus gas and maintenance are included.
Yeah, but bet it costs more in the long run.
Nope. Members save hundreds a month compared to car owners.
Okay, I'm checking them out.
Use the Zipcar app to book a car near you in minutes for a few hours or a weekend. Join instantly at zipcar.com. Zipcar. You don't need to own a car to have one.
The TV is on, your friends are ready, and now it's time to get the food. Grubhub is here with your order. Don't just plan for a successful Sunday night watch party. With Grubhub, you can plan for the whole football season because Amazon Prime members get a year of Grubhub Plus for free. That means paying $0 on your deliveries from your favorite restaurants. Go all the way to the end zone with Grubhub. Download the Grubhub app today or visit goforgrubhub.com/Amazon to know more about our Amazon Prime deal. Terms apply.
Do you love movies? Well, I have the podcast for you. Hey there, this is Mike D from Movie Mike's Movie Podcast, your go-to source for all things movies. Each episode explores a different movie topic, plus spoiler-free reviews on the latest streaming and movies in theaters. You'll also get interviews with actors and directors to take a look behind the scenes of your favorite movies. Listen to new episodes of Movie Mike's Movie Podcast every Monday on the Nashville Podcast Network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.